Hello, it's Gail here from Three Wise Crafters, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be using some products from Waffle Flower, including the Postage Collage die, the Postage Collage Christmas stencil, the Postage Collage block stencil, and Masking Magic from Gina K Designs. So here I've already cut out my Postage Collage panel with the die from Waffle Flower. So I'm just putting some removable adhesive on the back of my card panel. I use Express It double-sided tape runner, and I find that this is pretty good with holding down my card panel while I do the stenciling. So I've adhered my card panel to my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. I tend to use this for all of my stenciling at the moment. And I have the first stencil here from the Postage Collage Christmas stencil set. There's 4 stencils in this range, and I'm just going to line that up onto a card panel. So what I've done is I've put some low tack adhesive down just as a guide so I know where to line up my next stencils, and I have also put some tape down on top of the stencil to hold it down. To make it easier for lining up the stencil on your card panel, you can keep the cutout from the die cut of your Postage Collage and keep it into that full-sized A2 card panel. It makes it so much easier to line your stencil up than what I've done, but we're just going to work with it today. So the first ink colour I'm using is tea dye, and I'm going to use that on the reindeer and the house, and I've just masked off the little Christmas tree that is beside the house. So I'm just going to quickly put down that tea dye and then do our little house. So I've masked off our little house now, and the next colour I'm going to use is Mowed Lawn, and I'm going to be using it for the leaves here, for the tree here, and for the little tree down here. So these Postage Collage stencils make it really easy to create cards quick and simple. So I've only recently found the Postage Collage range from Waffle Flower, and I absolutely love them. So if it's not something that you've tried before, I highly recommend that you give it a go. The Postage Collage dies come in a range of sizes, including A2, A7, A6, Slimline, and Mini Slimline. And you can use the stencils to coordinate with all of those dies and just make them fit, or you can use little die cuts, and there's so many things that you can do with the Postage Collage dies and stencils, so have a go if you haven't already. You can see how quickly we've already done this first stencil. Well, we're nearly finished the first stencil. So the next colour I'm using is Candied Apple, and I'm going to do this in this panel here and one of the baubles up here. So I'm just applying that ink down, and careful not to go over onto my little reindeer and onto my Christmas tree on the other side. You could have masked off those areas, but if you're using a small blending brush or a mini detailed brush like this, then you'll be okay. You won't need to mask it off. Now, those mini detail brushes I get off Amazon, but there's many companies out there that also sell mini detailed blending brushes, so it just comes down to what your preference is. Now, for the bauble up in this corner, I'm using Worn lipstick. Now, to clean off my stencil, all I do is use Isocol, which is a rubbing alcohol that I get from my local supermarket in Australia, and I can refill this little spray bottle. They sell a bigger bottle as well at the supermarket, which often works out cheaper than buying the little bottle. So if you've got a little spray bottle like this, you can buy a bigger bottle and fill it up. I use a mini funnel to fill up this bottle without any issues. So all I need to do is give my stencil a quick spritz with the alcohol, and then I use another cloth to go over it. And when you use rubbing alcohol, your stencil is dry instantly. And this is something that I've always done to clean my stencils. It's not something new. So you can see here how easy that is to clean your stencil. So I have my second stencil lined up, and I've put some masking tape just here to mask off the little ties for our baubles. And I'm using tumbled glass behind these two areas, behind our reindeer and our little house. So what sort of crafts do you enjoy doing? I love doing stenciling, and die cutting is probably my favourite. I don't mind doing some stamped images and then using stencils over it, but stencils just make it so easy to create a card in a little amount of time, but the finished project is absolutely beautiful. So you might just want to hold down the reindeer a little bit so that you don't get ink going underneath. So the next distress ink I'm using is Abandoned Coral, and I'm going to use it up here and on our top left bauble. Have you started on your Christmas cards yet, or do you leave it to the last moment? Let me know in the comments below how you do your Christmas cards. Do you make different cards for everybody on your Christmas list, or do you just have one design and batch make? I quite enjoy making different cards for different people, so I know everybody has their own preferences. So I'm interested in hearing what you do for your cards. So I'm going to do this one down here in a different color, just so that we have a little bit of difference between up here and down in this panel of our Postage Collage. So I'm using barn door down in this one. And my ink pad is really juicy, so just be careful with that when you're doing your ink blending, that you don't go too far onto the other little images. You can always mask off these panels if you prefer. So I have our third stencil lined up, and I'm going to be using barn door up in this panel of our Postage Collage. And hopefully this will create a little bit of definition between the two different colours of red that I've used on the poinsettia leaves. So next I'm going to use tumbled glass on our little snowflakes. And just be aware that you've got the little tree stump here, but because the tumbled glass is quite light in colour, the brown that we'll use for the tree trunk, it will cover any blue that we get there, but you can mask that off if you prefer, or you're using a different colour of blue. It's quite easy to mask off. You can use either a masking tape of some kind, like Gina K Designs, or you can use some tape that you have in your stash. I tend to use just my green tape that I have here. It's low tack and it doesn't tear my paper. So you want a tape that is not going to tear your paper when you take it off. And there are some brands out there that will unfortunately tear your cardstock on you when you take it off. For the detail on our reindeer, I am just using Vintage Photo. Only up in this area though. I'm going to do something different here for the band on our reindeer. And I'm also going to be using the Vintage Photo on our house and our tree stumps as well. So after this stencil, we've only got one stencil to go. And then we've finished our little card base. So what I might do, because this tree trunk is quite small, I'm going to get one of my little blending brushes here just so that I can go in and put ink where I need it, and then I won't risk the ink going into our little snowflakes that we've just done. Now, using a mini detailed blending brush will actually make your ink a lot darker as well, because it's more concentrated in that area. Now, if you didn't have a mini detailed blending brush, you could have masked off your snowflakes and put down your ink for the tree trunks quite easily. For the reindeer's band and the little stars up where our baubles are, I'm going to be using Ultra New Enchanted Gold pigment ink with a little sponge dauber that I have just dedicated for the Enchanted Gold ink. Now, you could use a blending brush, but you would need to just dedicate that blending brush to this ink. It's much easier just to have a little dauber to pounce that ink onto the area that you want it to go. Now, I love this Enchanted Gold ink. It's really pretty when you take off the stencil and you see how it looks on your card panel. So it can, because these areas are just quite small, it can take a little bit just to get the ink to go through the stencil. But when we take it off and you see the finished card, you'll see how pretty it looks. And I'll be using the Enchanted Gold on some other areas within the next stencil as well. So it hasn't taken much effort really for me to apply this ink. I just need to make sure that I have enough ink on my dauber when I do it. So what you do need to do though, because we've applied a pigment ink, it takes a little bit longer to dry, and we need to give that a little bit of time to dry. I'm also going to apply the Enchanted Gold pigment ink down in this section of our Postage Collage as well. So what's your favorite brand of inks? I have a lot of different brands of inks that I've collected over the years. So the Ultra New pigment ink does dry relatively quickly, so I haven't really given this much time to dry at all. Now I'm going in with the Vintage Photo Distress ink again, and I'm just going to do the details on our little reindeer. All the supplies that I have used will be listed in the video description below, so make sure that you check that out. Now for the rest of the elements on this stencil number 4, I'm just going to be using the Ultra New Enchanted Gold pigment ink with my little sponge dauber again, and quickly apply that on to our Postage Collage panel. So this is pretty much on all of the other areas of our Postage Collage, and this will just add some extra colour and sparkle to our finished card design. So it doesn't take much to apply all of your ink blending and using this dauber to apply the Ultra New Enchanted Gold ink onto your card design. You could have done embossing ink and embossing powder instead if that's your preference, or you could have done a completely different colour of dye ink and your card would look just as beautiful. It's also very cold here where I live, so at the moment I'm creating this video without the heater on because our heater makes a lot of noise and it is so cold that as soon as I'm finished creating this video, I will be putting that heater on and trying to get warm. We're in winter here in Australia now, so I'm assuming that a lot of people will be heading into summer. And I really envy that. I really wish that we could have summer 12, well, maybe not 12 months of the year, but close to 12 months of the year would be really good. Okay, we're nearly finished. We've only got the detail on this bauble here, and then the windows on our little house down in this area down here, and then our postage collage panel's finished and we just need to adhere it to a card base. So I'm not sure at the moment whether I'm going to have my postage collage panel layered onto a different coloured card base and as a matte, and then put that onto a white card base. So I'll make that decision when I've seen what our card panel looks like. Alright, we've finished all of our pigment ink now. So what I forgot to do on Stencil 2 here, I forgot to do our shading on our Christmas trees. Because I've already got the baubles down on our center Christmas tree, the largest one, I'm not going to worry about that. And I'm going to do the details on the two smaller ones with the Lucky Clover Distress ink. And you could mask these off as well, but I'm not that worried about getting ink on our larger tree. It will just add a little bit of colour to it. And that was easy to line up our stencils again. And we also haven't done our little ties on our baubles, so I'm just going to mask that off and use our Enchanted Gold pigment ink. So I've just masked off those two areas and now I'm just going to apply our pigment ink on top. So I have the block stencil now, and what I'm going to do is use some J&K Design masking magic, and I'm just going to line this up down the bottom, and all I'm going to do is trace the squares because I'm going to cut the squares out and I'm going to mask off the ink blending that we have already done on our postage collage. And then I am going to do a gold border on our postage collage areas to add an extra, I don't know, wow factor, I suppose. It may not be as wow as what I think it might be, but you know, it's just going to add a little bit of difference to my postage collage card when I'm finished. So I'm going to cut these off and then I'll be back. So my idea of using the block stencils as a template and J&K Designs masking magic wasn't actually successful. There's a little perforation on your little panels here that when you cut out the masking magic, it's actually smaller than the area that you need to mask off. So what I've done to get around that issue is just use some of my green tape here, masked off the areas up here that I want. So what I want to do is add the Ultra New Enchanted Gold ink on all the borders of our stamped images, just to give it a different look when we finish our card. So to get around it, the tape will do the job and we just need to change it around when we go on to the next areas. This is going to take a little bit of time to do. So what I'll do is I will ink up this area and then I'll come back when we do the next section. So I know that this doesn't show up very well on camera, but this absolutely looks beautiful when I look at it. So I've masked off the next areas for our Enchanted Gold pigment ink that I'm going to do on the borders. Once I finish that, I'll be back. So I finished doing all the Enchanted Gold around our postage collage individual areas, and I really like how it has turned out. You can't see the gold shimmer as much on camera as what you can in person, but you can on different elements on the card, especially on these baubles here and on the Christmas tree. So that shimmer is there on these areas as well. And what you could do is cut along these perforations and have individual stamps, which would make your gold borders stand out even more. I'm just going to leave this as a whole Postage Collage panel at the moment, and I'm going to adhere it to a white card base. So for my card base, I have Nina Solar White in 110 pound, and I'm just going to score that at the 4 1/4 mark. So folding that in half and then using a scoring tool to just crease that fold even more. So this is what our Postage Collage looks on a white card base. And while it's okay, I'm not that keen on it. So I've grabbed a piece of red cardstock that I have in my stash. And I think that this looks better for our finished card. This is what I'm going to do to finish off my card. But let me know in the comments what you prefer. Do you prefer the just white card base, or do you prefer it with the red card base? So I just have a little bit of tape here that I have made into a circle, and I'm just going to place that on the inside of our card base just to hold down our card while we glue on our card panel. And I'm just going to use Gina K Design glue for that. So I just have my Gina K Designs glue in a fine tip bottle, and I find that this makes it easier to line it up on our card base using glue, and also for fine elements or the fine detail on elements, especially the intricate sentiments that are out nowadays. Now I line up my top left hand corner and the longest side, our folded side, with my card panel, and then I drop it down, and it usually lines up pretty well if everything has been cut to the correct size. So I've just used some Scotch 3M foam tape here, and I've put that down on to our Postage Collage panel. So I've removed all the backing pieces of our foam adhesive, and we can just adhere our panel, making sure that we've got our card base up the right way onto our card base, and try to get this as even around all sides as possible. Now I haven't put a sentiment on this card, and I'm not going to. I'm not sure what sentiment I want to put on there at the moment, and that's okay. You can create a card and not have a sentiment on it, and have it in your stash ready to send out when you decide what sentiment you have, and for the person that you're sending it to, because the person that you're sending it to can sometimes determine what sentiment that you have on your card. So this is our finished card, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So all the supplies are listed in the video description below, so make sure that you check that out. And if you liked the video, please make sure that you give the video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel while you're there. Thank you so much for watching.